Heart disease is the number one killer in the world today. So what I'd like to look at today is heart disease preventable? Can heart disease be conquered? Can the arteries be cleaned out? Can the heart be strengthened? But when you understand that the human body's been designed to heal itself, I think you'll realise that the answer to all those questions is yes. And we've seen some incredible turnarounds in the health retreats that I've been running. So what I'd like to look at is, I'd like to start with a Bible verse, and it's found in Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23, where the Bible says, "Keep the heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life." So keep the heart with all diligence, meaning we've got to look after this heart, we've got to strengthen this heart, and it can be strengthened. So we're going to look at that. And then the next part says, because out of it are the issues of life. Leviticus 17:11, the Bible says that the life of the flesh is in the blood. And we know that the heart is the pump that pumps the blood all through the human body. So any part of the body that is not getting blood will actually die. It'll quickly die. So there are some simple treatments that can strengthen the heart. There are some simple herbs and things that can keep that blood nice and thin and even open and strengthen the arterial walls. But what the heart is it's a muscle. So let's have a look at what the muscle is made up of. It's made up of cells. And as we've looked at a few times this week, the glucose goes into the cell under the action of insulin, and we're going to be looking at insulin in a little bit more detail after the break. So the insulin is the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose into the cell. When the glucose gets into the cell, it goes through a 20-step pathway, and this 20-step pathway delivers 2 units of energy. The end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose, and this chemical form of glucose is called pyruvate. Pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse of the cell, called the powerhouse of the cell because this 8-step pathway delivers to us 36 units of energy. What makes the difference is oxygen. Whereas the 20-step pathway does not use oxygen. The 20-step pathway creates energy by the process of fermentation. Our heart is a muscle, and the muscle is made up of cells, and here is how the cell is working. When we ensure that we're getting adequate oxygen coming in, every single cell that makes up the muscle, the heart, it'll work more effectively. So I'm going to be listing here the true remedies, those 8 laws of health. So pure air, when we're breathing in pure air, I trust you're breathing pure in while you're sleeping. I trust your windows are open every night. And the most powerful way to oxygenate your body is exercise. And exercise is probably the number one way to strengthen the heart. And probably your pulse is one indication of how strong your heart is. The stronger your heart is, the lower your pulse will be. And that's not genetics. My son, Peter, when he was 25, he's in his mid-30s now, he was training for a triathlon. And he was running up and down the hills behind Brisbane. So what he was doing, and this is the most effective form of exercise, it's the high-intensity interval training. So as the name implies, they are intervals of high intensity and intervals of recovery. And when you're exercising where there are hills, that's what you got. It's high intensity up, recovery down. Now my son Peter is a tiler, and he was a junior tiler at this time, And he was in an old bathroom, and it had an old 50s size, not 50s size, but a 50s type vanity unit, big ceramic thing, and it had a huge chip out of it and very heavy. And as he was manoeuvring it, he'd loosened it, got it out, it slipped and hit his ankle. And I think if he hadn't had a bone in there, it would have cut his foot off. And the blood hit the roof. And he yelled out to my son, who's about 8 years older, he's also a builder, he said, "James." And James said to him, "I'm on the phone, mate." And I tell you that to show you that there was a little bit of a delay before James came in. And I think Peter said, "Quick!" So James came in, and James said when he came into the bathroom, the blood was spattered all over the roof, all over the walls. And the reason that was so, you see, when they went to hospital and they took his pulse, it was about 50 beats per minute. Peter's heart was so strong that when it beat, it pushed the blood with such a burst that the blood hit the roof. Now, if Peter's pulse was 70 beats per minute, the blood wouldn't hit the roof. The reason why Peter's pulse was so slow is because of the exercise, because he was running up and down hills. And that's what you'll find as you implement an exercise program, and we all should have an exercise program. We're training for something more important than the Olympic Games. Do the Olympian athletes miss a day? Never. What are we training for? We're training for life. We're training for our latter years. And I want to enjoy my latter years. I often forget, but I think I'm probably nearing my latter years. But as this name implies, this high-intensity interval training are intervals of high intensity, intervals of recovery. So the research has been showing, and Dr. Doug McGuff, who's a heart specialist, he implemented this for his heart patients. And he found that 30 seconds high intensity was a good amount. In fact, I've looked at I've read a few books on the matter, and the common denominator is 30 seconds is a good time. Now, when I first started to do this, I got to 20 seconds and my body says, yeah, that'll do, because I'm running very fast up a hill. When I got to 25 seconds, my body's saying, this is getting ridiculous. And when I get to 30 seconds, I nearly feel like I'm dying. If I didn't count, I actually wouldn't get to that. And my husband and I, back at Misty, we run up and down the hills every morning, and we're not talking when we're running up the hills. We do the talk in recovery time. Recovery time seems to average out with the average fitness person at about 90 seconds. That's about a minute and a half. How do you know when you've had enough recovery, when you feel you could once again run for your life? What if you can't run? Exercise bike. Most of the research on high-intensity interval training has been done on the exercise bike. So if people have knee or ankle or hip problems or balance problems, they're holding on. And if their knee and ankles aren't happy, most of the weight is on the hips, and you can hold on and you can cycle very, very fast. And then in recovery time, for Michael and I, recovery is walking down the hill. On an exercise bike, recovery time might be just cycling very slowly. The research shows that if you're doing something in recovery time, it's more effective than if you just sit still, and you might feel like leaning against the tree. This is usually done for a cycle. And that cycle is usually done for a cycle of 6, so this is 15 minutes. I've been generous there. That's not long, is it? Everyone's got 15 minutes. If you don't think you've got 15 minutes, how many hours have we been given in a day? 24 hours. This is only a quarter of 1 hour. That's all it takes.